process of becoming a self-formation is a unique journey of each one of us, and university has to help us in this journey. Therefore, Bildung was at the center of self-formation and learning in Germany, which then got spread into other European countries. At that time, there was a contestation between this Humboldt Bildung model of education and the Napoleon model of university, which was much more technical. So my submission is that to enter into this fascinating terrain, the poetics and the politics of unstereotyped self, and the unstereotyped self is really harbinger of a different vision of society, different practice of society. Because the societal is not just a reproduction of the conventional. In social theory and psychology of moral development, Lawrence Goldberg has talked about a post-conventional stage in the moral development of an individual. And Jürgen Habermas has been very inspired by Goldberg's research and sociology and philosophy. He has brought this a very important way of thinking about the processes of becoming a subject. So if we bring together all these thoughts, limits of the typal, limits of the conventional, and with Habermas, this post-conventional development, each one of us, we might begin with the typal, we might begin with the stereotypical, but in the process of development, we have the responsibility to cultivate the post-conventional, the unstereotyped. And when we join this poetics of the unstereotyped self, the politics of the unstereotyped self, then it gives birth to a new self, a new society. And the poetics and the politics of the unstereotyped self then becomes a space and time for the realization of the potential that is there in self and society. In his Savitri, Sri Aurobindo writes, "You shall reveal to them the hidden eternities, the breadth of infinitudes not yet revealed." So in a way, the poetics and the politics of the unstereotyped self becomes a space and time where we realize our own hidden eternities, our hidden potential, and we manifest it in poetry, self, culture, society, world, and cosmos. So with this offering, so I invite Professor Meera Chakrabarty to kindly enrich us. And as I am a part of the role, so from now onward, I request Ramdhi to kindly nurture the conversation after Professor Chakrabarty's presentation while I'm listening, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ananta, very much. Thank you, Randhir and Minati and others. You can hear me, I suppose. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I'll just try to, I think I'll take about 15-20 minutes to just try to say a few things, because I have taken one or two dimensions, and this book I have requested Ananta to be the guest editor, for which we have received all the papers. And then Ananta suggested that if we can discuss this, then there can be a better idea about what the book is going to be about. So when I reflected on these selves, there are many individuals who have taken a cause. In majority of the cases, I found that they, with their cause, they have also taken death on their shoulders. And that was quite enigmatic and quite, I thought we should try to explore as to why most of them, I'm just taking few names, but most of them, many of them have served the cause and died, killed. Most of them have been killed, with, of course, few exceptions. So one of the revealing glimpses of the unstereotyped selves is the fact that these personalities have all along walked with death. Now, I have already submitted, I mean, we have already the paper, so I'm just selecting certain excerpts from the paper and then reading them. We see in the Bible that Jesus, when condemned to death and crucified by the Romans, he fought for a cause. And then he, while dying, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Now, in India, Gandhi, walking towards his prayer meeting, was shot at point blank range on 30th January 1948 by Nathuram Godse. And Gandhi cried, "Hey Ram," as if to say, oh Lord, please forgive the person who has done this. Now, similar things have happened, similar events have happened with other personalities like Martin Luther King Jr., leader of civil rights movement, assassinated on 4th April 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, United States. And his famous speech was, "I have a dream." Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the US, was assassinated on 15th April 1865. He gave his life for the cause of abolishing slavery. John F. Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States, was assassinated likewise in 1963. He was a staunch supporter of the African American civil rights movement. So in this list, many more can be added. Why is this? What is happening with these unstereotyped? Why these unstereotyped cells had an idea of leading people and then sacrificing their life? So I would try to see that this concept of the concept of perhaps the issue of humanitarian or the cause for which they die, for them the concept of equality, freedom, and justice have been the part of the emancipatory politics since long. But however, they seem to be applicable to some people and not applicable to some others, though they were called as universal, but they have not been universal, and as evident from the facts that are recorded in history. Now, we see how Mill has been, John Stuart Mill, in his essay on liberty, had said that despotism is a legitimate mode of government in dealing with barbarians, and liberty as principle has no application to any state of things anterior to the time when mankind has become capable of being improved by free and equal discussions. Now, this is, on one hand, creates an ambiguity, as it sounds congenial to equal discussions. But on the other hand, the barbarians are to be treated with despotism. And this looks very contradictory. So therefore, what we see later on, that this kind of a dissonance was inherited by Gandhi. Gandhi has inherited this kind of legacy of dissonance. How could he was to say that so therefore he thought that this is a challenge because as you all know that Gandhi gathered his strength from the source which he believed always uphold the truth and righteousness in a real sense. And he thought that empowering people to seek liberty, taking to such sources would certainly be a way, one of the means to achieve freedom. So he took resort to the principles of Gita, Bhagavad Gita. One of the well-known facts that he had always acknowledged that Bhagavad Gita has helped him. Even when he was saying that without prayer I wouldn't be alive, prayer has helped me so much. He took to satyagraha, or the peaceful resistance with non-violent actions. And all this was considered by him as the sacred space. Remember that he was in a colonial, in the situation when India was being colonized, ruled by the colonial administration. So therefore, he found that this space, sacred space, which he acknowledges has come to him through Bhagavad Gita, to Gita, that he knew that this space could not be colonized by the fascist and racist administration. So it's not a surprise, therefore, that it appears that fearlessly Gandhi had always carried death along with him, much as a companion, though others near him and working with him were perhaps not all aware of this dimension of his thought. There were a lot of, many times there were attempts of assassination on Gandhi. So for instance, one very popular instance is that it has been also shown in the movie, Gandhi movie, that the event of being thrown from the compartment of the train. And that could have caused him death, not only by the impact of his fall, but also from severe cold that he had to sustain that night. This inhuman act, Gandhi saw the human rights being continuously trampled. And therefore, he thought that the empowered by power of truth, Satya, that's why Satyagraha, Satya, he decided to venture into the territories in which he would uphold humanism in a way that would leave the hegemonic administration, colonial administration, speechless, which really happened. You know how Einstein had remarked that a man half naked has walked this earth. People will not believe it, you know. So therefore, when you see when the British imposed the salt laws on people, Gandhi decided to offer satyagraha against the unjust law. And there was mass civil disobedience throughout India followed, as millions broke the salt laws. And how many were brutally there, not only beaten, but many people, because of the impact of the attack, even died. So we see how, like Gandhi, there's another, yet another person, individual, Lincoln, who believed that racism cannot be fundamental to the concept of freedom, and that is a huge constraint. He got himself involved in people's cause. The 16th president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, emphasized that the Declaration of Independence which had declared freedom and equality for all, how would one like to follow if there is a system of slavery existing there? So therefore, the Constitution, he said that tolerated slavery happened to be the center of serious discussion in Jaffa. No, sorry, in a meeting. Sorry. But those who were opposed, I mean, they were opposed to, people were certainly opposed to slavery, and people were opposed to his views on slavery. They argued that freedom did not apply to all. This was not acceptable to Lincoln, because not only it was unconstitutional, but it was also unethical, he said. So he truly believed that freedom was not only fundamental to the non-slave population, but also equally to the slave population. And it was as much a political issue as it was the issue of moral one. So he had tried to. He was such an honest person, a lawyer, that people call him Honest Abe. He had earned a reputation that gave rise to the epithet used for him as an Honest Abe. So Lincoln was very much disturbed by the people who justified racism, and he put himself in much dangerous position. There were many times there were attack on him, but he was adamant in his emphasis to do away with this practice. And therefore he was opposed to the Kansas Act because it had declared indifference. So he said, I cannot, I must think and convert real zeal for the spread of slavery. I cannot but hate it. He didn't support naturally. So then Lincoln's sacred space, like that of Gandhi, was the habitat for all that would be inclusive for all. That would bring the people who opposed slavery and people who did not oppose slavery. So he tried for this kind of a effort. He put a lot of effort to bring all of them together. There was no other way than opposing slavery tooth and nail, he felt. So as the slavery debate in Nebraska and Kansas territories became particularly acrimonious, Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas proposed popular sovereignty as a compromise. And the legislation, the measure would allow the electorate of each territory to decide the status of slavery. Now, the legislation alarmed many Northerners who sought to prevent the resulting spread of slavery. But Douglas Kansas Nebraska Acts narrowly passed Congress in May 1854. But then Lincoln can be, later on you see that how this marked his return to his political life with such a cause, which I think has been also discussed in the context of I discuss it a little later with Martin Luther King Jr. Now, one might think that it appears to endorse the views of Immanuel Kant on the issue of freedom, because he seems to relate freedom with ethics, because people, both individually and collectively, can assert their existence through freedom of expression. And some of them who are denied their rights by power of exclusion can also use freedom to say so, since freedom is as much an ethical issue as it is an existential one. So therefore, I would not go to the discussion of Kant, because that is a lengthy discussion in the paper. I would try to go back to how Lincoln's legacy was carried by Martin Luther King, and who was a son of a civil rights activist. He led marches claiming voting rights for Black people, and King realized how many of the white population was still under their own spell and was not really to cooperate with the Black people in their struggle for their coexistence with the white population, as if defying that the declaration did not impress them. So such people seems to believe in the naturalization of the slavery system, which was very hurting. And therefore, the commentator Neo-Cosmos points out that the ideas that pervaded the Enlightenment thinkers like John Stuart Mill, who, commenting on liberty, said despotism is a legitimate mode of government in dealing with barbarians, liberty as a principle has no application to any state of things anterior to time when mankind has become capable of being improved by free and equal discussion. This was unacceptable, as it is totally appears to be excluding many individuals from the framework of liberty and equality, because it argues in favor of only colonial rule, which have treated the colonized people and very brutally, calling them barbarians and exterminating them at all possible occasions. Now, this is the poetics of it is therefore that if the subjectivity and the identity are excluded from the framework of liberty and equality to many communities of people, then evidently liberty and equality are not universally applicable, and hence it amounts to the politics of exclusion. Ultimately, then the very basics of these libertarian perspectives fall short of being universal ideas. As a result, perpetuation of exclusivity consistently dominates these perspectives, be it in the area of discrimination applied to women or to the colored people. We still see cases like George Floyd, which happened recently, the death of George Floyd, or any other marginalized group. So this becomes evident in the killings of men and women openly. So often, like as I refer to George Floyd, and therefore it is an evidence that this rule, this perspective of universal humanism is not applied to all. King was influenced very much by Gandhi. That when even in the course of his lectures, he would say that he would adopt the non-violence means to attain the goal. He said even in due course, his appreciation of Gandhi was so much that even in his Nobel lecture. In his Nobel lecture also, he mentioned how he was amazed by a successful president of Gandhi, in a way, challenging the might of British Empire, struggling only with the weapons of truth, soul force and non-injury, that is ahimsa and courage. So we see how even later on, people like how do we think that these personalities and also others like we have the death caused to Olof Palme. Not only death, he was murdered. Olof Palme, the Swedish Prime Minister, he went well known for his pacifist views, especially on Vietnam War. He was assassinated in Stockholm in 1986. And for a similar cause, also for supporting the cause of Black people, John F. Kennedy, as I said, the 35th President of the United States, he was shot dead on 22nd November 1963. So all these people walked with death right from the beginning of their active life. Their walks have been dangerous ones just for adopting a challenging ideology and action, which could never be without a sacrifice. And those who, as Ananta mentioned about Adi Shankara, there is this, I'll not call a myth, but a story which goes with Shankara, that Mrityu or death was his constant companion. He would often have dialogue with death. Tagore treated death like addressed death as his beloved in his songs. So these are, and they all of them were in very dangerous position. Along with Gandhi, even Tagore was in very dangerous position. And he of course renounced his knighthood after the Jallianwala Bagh episode. So taking such courage and sacrificing for the cause, or sometimes when they were not sacrificing, they were killed. So this is because their works have been dangerous, adopting a challenge, because they for adopting a challenging ideology and action which could never have been without their death. So those who discriminate between one kind of people and the other only to exclude them in all possible ways fail to understand that those who are denied of subjectivity will invoke humanity and struggle against the polity of exclusion, with a conviction that it is imperative to struggle for those who are denied existence, even at the cost of their lives. And therefore, it appears that death for all these individuals have been a constant companion. And therefore, apart from facing death, these unstereotyped selves, by their ideology and action, have helped develop a collective which carry out their mission for freedom further. Therefore, it's when Aurobindo was also jailed, though he was not killed, but he was jailed. And look at the transformation that Aurobindo brings it, that there is this collective which continuously works for freedom. And therefore, this different perspective may point out how it gives rise to an immense possibility that could transform the leaders who have died, their objective, to a collective action, and to continue the journey to freedom for humanity from torture and bondage of unfreedom. Therefore, these individuals walking with death have always prioritized their concerns for universal humanity and have fought without cowed down by death. And for this cause, whenever they found people being excluded from humanitarian existence, they have taken death head on, confronted, challenged by death. They have taken on. So therefore, our concerns with such conviction, or with their vision of extraordinary individuals, help us to discover the essence of humanity through their struggles constantly. So I just put these a few points, and we can try to see how you people think about it. Why these are unstereotyped? What is the challenge that they had taken, and why they obstinately carried on with that, come what may. So thank you, Ananta, and thank you, Randy. These are my few points that will. Okay.
Thank you, Mira. So now we join Mira in thinking together. So please, questions, thoughts, and from now onwards, I request Andhit to kindly. Or maybe I can begin with a query. That is,
yes, yes, surely.
The structures of structural exclusion and the struggle for inclusion and transformation and working with death. Now, working with death is not isolated from the challenges also. And you present us that one level of the life and engagement of all our inspiring protagonists. I remember one aspect from Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, and he writes about it. when I was visiting Washington, D.C., in December 2015, I visited Library of Congress and then I read some of his unpublished papers. And there I read this, that in the middle of the night, one day, so when his wife and children had already gone to bed, he receives a call. And the call is, you have to leave the town tomorrow. And otherwise, so we would not let you leave, something to that effect. And Martin Luther writes about it. And he says that what I am going to do now, I cannot wake up my wife who is very old and he should be sleeping now. And then he felt this sense of, he could feel that the only thing that I could do is to surrender myself totally. New self, a new sense of connection with the divine, which then becomes a source of life and strength. So I request you to kindly give us this dimension, that it is not, too simple, that all these protagonists, they have really gone through the gorge of life, and the cirque of life, and entering into the cirque of life is not devoid of agitation and many kind of challenges, existential challenges. And how do they negotiate that?
Actually, what I have tried to, my sources have shown is that he was expecting, he was actually talking to a musician, the lyrics of the song, and when he was on phone, talking to him on phone, that person was supposed to come and see him. The musician was supposed to come and see him. I'm trying to search that reference. I'm not getting it here. Maybe it is in somewhere else. So, and then there was a sudden gunshot where he was killed. But the background of this was that when he was asked to carry guns, because there were earlier also there were attempts on his life. As he was so much influenced by Gandhi's ideology, he said, he denied, he said, I will not take guns anymore. So the inner the dichotomy that was going on in his mind earlier about, yes, he says, yes, I'll try to be treating my meetings should be a non-violent way of expressing things, but sometimes violence happens. You cannot stop it. So he was certainly aware of this dichotomy, this kind of challenges that is there. That contradiction might happen once sometimes, but then it strengthened him. He says, no, I have now decided. Earlier he used to carry guns. But later on he decided, after being quite influenced by Gandhi and others, he decided he would not that. And this hesitation comes out, I mean, as I pointed out to his, that if Gandhi could challenge that mighty British Empire then through non-violence, then I would follow non-violence. you would see that Mandela follows non-violence. Though he was, I mean, there would have been attempted, I'm sure, on Mandela's life. Though he was in prison, which is kind of a death situation in prison, keeping him in dark rooms for years together. So these I would not say actually dichotomies, but these challenges have been weighed on, the pros and cons of these challenges have been weighed by these people. The Jesus, for instance, says that, okay, I understand why it is I stand for this conviction, but these people who are not understanding, they are having a kind of confusion in their mind. So kindly forgive, oh Lord, please forgive. So these will be always the challenge. That is why they are unstereotyped. A stereotyped person would never be even courageous to take a cause. And the moment we find that this is something challenging or this is something dangerous, we will run away. We are stereotyped. And this is why they are unstereotyped, because they have weighed the pros and cons, yet they have taken courage to traverse the path of death without being afraid of it. Because at least in the Indian context, death is another stage. But for the Western or for the European or for any other, that is, since they don't believe in rebirth, therefore the concept of death is different there, and that would have made them feel not like an Indian, not like Gandhi, not like Aurobindo, for whom the soul is always living. It's constant there, and the death is just a stage. So these poetics, these challenges, these aesthetics, these moral values have been weighed in their mind, and that is why we find them unstereotyped. Ananda.
Thank you, Meera. So other questions and thoughts, please.
People might be feeling sleepy.
Hi, Professor Chakravarti. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
This is Pooja. Thank you for your presentation. And when I first read the title of your talk, the word poetics and self, then I started thinking about Paul Ricoeur's book on the other as self. The otherness in a poetic sense, in a very abstract sense, define self in a very abstract and not empirical or like a.
Why don't you reveal yourself? Like to see you.
I'm maybe I think my internet connection would
okay. All right.
So my own work, I would introduce myself later, but this is very interesting. The way you speak about the self is very interesting. But although after like hearing your thoughts, I think that I just have this question: if you are really talking about a self or a subject or citizen, because when we talk about the self. Generally it's something related to subjectivity, but the way you speak about the stereotyped nature of an individual, it seems to me that you're like talking politically, right? So when it comes to politics, the individual then becomes a citizen, and I wouldn't say like in Rousseau's sense, it wouldn't, like your characterization of the self or the individual is not subject-like, but at least citizen-like. But I'm very happy to, see how you articulate this idea of the self, this individual, living with this idea of death. I find it very interesting because even in subjectivity, like in subjective experience, you have positive and negative experiences, right? But we still go through life. For instance, positive and negative emotions or thought processes. So self in that way, I would say, like, it's a struggle between positive and negative. And my work is, I have worked to understand this aspect of the self as well. So I really appreciate the things you've said. And but at some point you say we have to reject this idea of universal humanism. I didn't understand how, why we should reject it, because there's some recent work in Europe related to universalism. The work is concentrated on this aspect of trying to bring races together, like commonality, generality, what is very basic to being a human. Yeah, so these were my thoughts, and I would be curious to know why you would say that, like universal humanism is something which is impossible.
Thank you. Thank you, Pooja, and thank you, Mira. I request you to please wait and accept another question from Minati. Minati, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
So, good evening, everyone. It is always a pleasure to listen to Meera ma'am. So, thank you for your deliberation. What I wanted to know a little bit exactly that Pooja ma'am was asking. No, please talk a little bit about self. As we know, how did those people saw? Self, because self is like, it is a substance, a subject, and action, where you see it in two parts, like true self and observing self. How did they consider themselves as self? And another question is, how do we can go from being stereotyped to being unstereotyped? Because when we see the purpose of poetics, no, it helps us to discover who we are and to express our true emotions. And many times we feel with expressing those things, we are not being accepted. That stereotype is more accepted. So how do one go from stereotype to being unstereotyped? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that.
So now, Mira, I request you to please help deal with two questions. And after these two questions, because of contingency of time, I would request Mina to propose the vote of thanks, and we'll conclude our seminar by 10 p.m. today. So Mira, please.
Okay. So I'll combine these two, because Pooja and Minati is talking about self and subjectivity, but and then we'll see how much time we have. Now, one thing, subjectivity or the self that we have mentioned is that it can work both at political level as well as on the metaphysical level, and therefore if we take, that is why I have at the very beginning of the paper, I have tried to mention that it is a kind of what I have said, that the principle of ethics, which comes in the way, because when you talk about freedom, equality, etc., both on political, cultural, social level, these are also ethical values, and therefore that can be extended naturally also to the metaphysical world. But one thing what you were trying to see is that this self at one level, individual and collective level, can have political participation, as these people have been doing, as well as both being spiritual, like Gandhiji always, he always would call his movement a spiritual movement more. he would like to make it qualify it as a spiritual movement. And many of the spiritual movement, like in Vivekananda Ramakrishna movement or Aurobindo's movement, Aurobindo was a very political person, from his life and works and his action and his struggle in the, against the colonial administration. It was in the beginning. It was with guns that he would use weapons. So that was quite a very, from the violent to the non-violent, that Aurobindo you can see. But Gandhi, of course, has always been a non-violent way of putting it. So there is no contradiction between the between the self, which is taking part in the political arena, and the self which is taking part in the spiritual process, because these are ethical values. That is one thing. So therefore, the subjectivity and the identity can be expressed both through the political participation, as Martin Luther King, as John F. Kennedy, as Olof Palme. They were not perhaps actually. Martin Luther King Jr. was a priest in the church. He was a church person. So, like Gandhi, maybe Lincoln wasn't. Maybe Olof Palme wasn't. Mother Teresa, though she was not being, thankfully, not attacked, but she was attacked in different ways, criticized, but not physically attacked. Perhaps I have not come across any. And the question that you put, universal human rights, Pooja, that these are in the Constitution. That is how Lincoln is throwing a challenge. He's saying, if you accept the Constitution, then do you want to say that Constitution is trying to accept slavery? Because Constitution is saying that all people are free. We have also adopted, have in our Constitution, we the people. And we always turn to Constitution when we say that there is no equality here. When the women struggles, I have been in the women's movement for a long time. So we will turn ourselves to the Constitution. So when we say we do not distinguish between men and women, so we have equal rights, etc. So therefore, the Constitution gives you the right, but the application or the implementation of those are not universally done. I mean, if it is done, then George Floyd will not be killed. If it is done, then the women will not suffer. So even now, after so much of struggle, women have lot of barriers to cross. They are not treated equally. So therefore, you have the principles, but it is not being, and you call it universal, but you do not apply it universally. That is one thing. Second thing that you said, Pooja. So I said that. And this thing is very interesting, saying how we from stereotype to go to unstereotype. You go to unstereotype when you really take these challenges. As I said, we are stereotyped because we are so afraid. We will not take a cause because it would harm me or somebody, or our family members will not accept, or whatever reasons. So we are very stereotyped. You become unstereotyped. Gandhi was a very ordinary person. He became from ordinary stereotype to unstereotype. He became extraordinary. So therefore, the cause that he led, his struggle in South Africa, his struggle in India, has made him this thing. So one is not born unstereotyped. One has to take up these challenges and travel the path of the challenges, confronting this kind of very dangerous things that can happen to him. And that only is the way. So I hope I have tried to answer to both of you, Pooja and Minati. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to know your work, Pooja. So please, I'll be happy to know your work. You said you have done some work on that. So
On self, yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to know. Yes, Ananta, thank you.
It's a book that I wrote. It's called Emergence of Levels of Self, a New Theory of Consciousness. It was published in 2020 by a publisher based in Oxford.
Oh, good.
You can find it on the internet.
That's very nice.
or I can send it to you if I get your email.
Sure, sure.
But it's so interesting to know how you define the self as unstereotyped, because like it's in between the concept. The way you explained it now, it seems like it's in between the concept of subjective self and the like very objective, in a Hegelian sense. Let's say the subject is not, like the individual is not just subjective but also even political.
But Hegel is controversial. I pointed out in this paper, but I didn't go to these because he did not accept the kind of concept of equality, which we'll go to others. That's a different issue. But because he did not, I mean, he denied history to the Africans, which was terrible. So therefore, I doubt if we bring in Hegel, that will be another discourse.
But this conceptualization of the general will, why someone joins a group, then in that dynamic, the subjective and objective or political divide is.
That's good. That's okay. That is different. But I'm talking about the universal application of it, which he did not agree. He did not agree with it. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ananta.
Hello.
Yes.
Randhi is telling something he has written in the chat box, right? I want to explain the content of concept of self as irreal as it may be. He's asking if anyone any suggestion.
Is real. What is? I want to explain the content of the concept of self as irreal as it may be. Any suggestion? So please explain, Randeep. किधर है रणदीप?
It's actually, the Joshni has already presented one presentation on self. So she is one of our speakers of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming webinar series. Actually, we have a concept, we have a word for it, like self. So there must be some content of the concept. But what? Although it functions like an indexial pronoun like I or you, it is not an indexial pronoun because it cannot replace indexial in a sentence. So what is the content of this concept of self?
Self here has been taken in both, as Pooja was asking why it is that there is the universal application. So all the selves in that sense. Therefore, I said, when you take self in the political as a political agent, self there as an agent, as a person of action there, and then it has to be both the individual and the collective level. Whatever are the principles of democracy, freedom, etc., must apply to all selves in that sense. But what you are talking, Randi, is that I or you is that is the metaphysical content of the self, where when you say tat tvam asi or aham brahmasmi, etc., there, who is that I? Then the Descartes' position can come as to that he searches and he says, no, where do I find this I don't find it here, I don't find it there. Or even Shankara is talking of that the whole body, this is not I, that is not I, but what is I actually? So he goes to ultimately the universal self, or called Brahman. So these are the two different arena. One is the arena of philosophy, of the metaphysics, where the question of I, you, etc. is being questioned as to who you are, I, the existential aspect of that, whether there is a real existence or this is Maya or etc. So these are the contents of the self of I and you, Yushmat Asmat, where Shankara tries to give his commentary on Brahma Sutra. Yushmat Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho. These are the where through the index of I and you just have a functional understanding of the world, etc. Ultimately, there is nothing except the being or the Sat, etc. So that is arena of the metaphysics, where your term for I and you are being in length being discussed. That's a discourse on subjectivity. Here we are taking on the political level or socio-cultural level, where the I or the self is an agent of action and to transform or to challenge or whatever. So that agent of for that transformation has the rules of freedom or ethics or any tool to transformation must apply to all. That has to be clear. So these are the two different areas of understanding darshana and then it's the rajakiya, the politics. It can't be mixed up. I don't know, Randhir, did you comprehend? Did you get the idea? Is it okay, Randhir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Randhir, can we now go for vote of thanks?
Yes, please.
सो गए क्या? सब लोग सो गए मिनते. मैं और आप हैं बस. चलो.
प्रेजेंटेशन काफी जागृत करने वाला है.
नहीं, रणधीर तो सोया नहीं है. ठीक है.
I don't know, Anant bhai, you have to doubt.
Anant bhai is gone to sleep, I know. He just initiate discussions and they said, oh, all you people will have it now. So अनंत को वो तो मुझे मालूम है, चला गया सोने. ओके. कोई आवाज ही नहीं है अनंत का. देखो. हाँ ठीक है, चलो. कोई बात नहीं.
On behalf of I, Minati Pradhan, on behalf of Sadhya Chakra and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, would like to thank from the bottom of my heart to our own, I may dare to call our own Meera Ma'am, Professor Meera Chakravarti, for very, very interesting new topics for me, at least, to learn so many things. And it was very beautiful deliberation, Ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being the guest. And I would like to thank our moderator and mentor, Professor Anant Kumar Giri, for every week giving us a topic to learn and enlighten sessions. Because of him, we are having every week. I would like to thank Madam Pooja Shoni for her insightful inputs to our discussion. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our online platform participants and the Facebook platform participants for joining us. Thank you all. At the last, not the least, I would like to thank our convener, Professor Randhir Kumar Gautam, for arranging and executing all the programs very well. Thank you, Randhir. And pardon me if I have forgotten anybody's name. And thank you all.
Yeah, मैंने पहले सबको thanks बोल दिया है भाई. अनंत को भी और रणधीर को भी और मिंती को भी. Okay. Okay, thank you. Good night.